Hi, I'm Ellen, and welcome to day 11 of Vlog Every Day in April. Today's topic is answering questions regarding my mediumship vlog from day 2. So, I'm going to read you what was sent to me via email, and I'll proceed from there, okay? Hi Ellen. First, thank you for your April vlogs. You're welcome. I have lots of questions about the mediumship vlog. 1. To begin practicing, how do I start? Do I need to prepare by grounding before each reading? Or is once a day enough, like in the morning? During a reading, would I simply ask for someone to come forward? Out loud? In my head? Does it matter? And who am I asking? The ancestors or the client's spirit guides? So that's question 1. And I'll break it down into its 3 parts. So the first part of that question is, do I need to prepare by grounding before each reading, or is once a day enough, like in the morning? So when it comes to grounding, that's something you can do once a day, unless you're feeling ungrounded. My suggestion would be incorporate it into your morning routine so you don't have to think about it. As I just heard, no matter what comes up, you'll know it's done. Okay? And anything else to say about that? No. There is definitely something related, and let me see if it would be helpful to mention that now. Yeah, probably. So, related to grounding is creating a sacred space, as I call it. And that's something you'll want to do for each person you're working with. You'll want to create that sacred space, which is the connection between you and the person you're reading for, and then invite into that sacred space your client's spirit guides and ancestors. At the conclusion of your session, you'll want to then open the sacred space, meaning that you basically dissolve that connection, which releases the energy that you formed. That the way my guides are showing it to me is it's as though you've created this sacred ball of energy, which to me it feels like a room for yourself, for your client, and then for their spirit guides and ancestors. And so once you're done with the room, you'll want to empty it. And you empty it in the sense of it's almost like bursting a bubble or a balloon, and permit that energy to dissolve. And also be sure that you have sealed the connection between you and your client, so you're not still streaming information for them. Okay? You might notice that I'm putting my hand in front of my heart chakra, and because for me, it's a heart connection that I form with my clients, and so that's where I need to sever that connection after a session. And you're only severing the connection of the session itself. You aren't severing the relationship with the client. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So, the next part is, during a reading, would I simply ask for someone to come forward? Out loud? In my head? Does it matter? So, it depends on what you're hoping to accomplish. And I say that with great care because the best thing I can suggest when it comes to entering into a session with someone is to absolve yourself of any expectations. And in that, you're making room for anything and everything. And what's important about that is you aren't eliminating or creating blockages around messages that are needing to come through. So, for example, let's say that your client wants to connect with their mother or grandmother. You can honor that by inviting that connection, and yet be very careful that you aren't doing that to the exclusion of any other ancestor who may have an important message to deliver. It could be that the message they really need to hear is coming from an aunt, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, a great uncle, an ancestor they never met. So be careful about being super specific and focusing on, okay, my client wants to connect with their mother, so I'm only going to invite their mother into the session. Okay, be really careful not to put those kinds of limitations on the session. Let's see. So, out loud, in my head, does it matter? It doesn't matter. I do it internally. The whole process of creating the sacred space and connecting with my client, inviting their ancestors, spirit guides, angels, whoever else in, is all done before I actually sit with the client, and is done completely internally. So if someone was watching me, it'd be like watching grass grow. Because there's not much going on the outside. I know my facial expressions perhaps might change, because sometimes I do respond to the energy that I feel when I open that space and invite those energies in. I feel a very definite physical sensation when I connect to my client, and it can also be that way when their guides and angels and ancestors enter into that space too. Okay? So it's really about your comfort level. If it feels more tangible to speak the invitations out loud, then do that. If it feels more resonant to do it all internally as I do, then do it that way. So I guess you could say it really doesn't matter, in the sense that it's whatever suits you best, whatever works best for you. All right? The next section of this first question is, and who am I asking? The ancestors or the client's spirit guides? And for a mediumship reading, you're asking the ancestors. Now, that isn't to say that spirit guides won't necessarily have a say in what's going on. However, primarily, you'll be communicating with the client's ancestors. Oh boy, so my guides definitely have something to say here. With this, understand that there is extra energy which is associated with the ancestors. Extra energy meaning the clairsentience. There is the feeling of emotions, feeling of the physical symptoms, and in this offers validation for your client. Yeah, so if you are communicating solely through your spirit spirit guides, or through the client's spirit guides, on behalf of ancestors, what you're doing is creating a sort of filter that won't necessarily allow you, probably won't allow you, to pick up on the physical symptoms and the emotions that will provide the validation that will be helpful to the client that they're actually communicating with their loved ones. Spirit guides aren't going to give you the level of clairsentience that an ancestor will. My spirit guides during a regular intuitive session will have me feel physical symptoms if that needs to come up on behalf of the client. However, it's definitely buffered. It's a sensation so I can identify what area of the body. I can even identify if it feels painful, and yet I don't feel pain. There's a resonance with the information, the way it's given to me, that I can identify that something may be painful, even though I'm not feeling it as pain. When it comes to mediumship, we can feel pain. We can be made to feel pain. And even though we can acknowledge that it isn't ours, it just really takes, as I just heard, some refinement, because I'll admit, even for me, it can be overwhelming to feel extreme emotions and extreme physical symptoms out of the blue. And so we just need to be in care of ourselves through grounding and making sure that we are nourished and watered and rested so that we can have all of our faculties around us for those instances. Okay? So, question number 2. Once developed, is the switch on all the time? Say I'm walking through the grocery store and I get hit with all sorts of sensations. So the short answer is yes. And this is where boundaries comes in. So when I'm outside of a client session, yes, I can still receive information. Yes, I regularly have communication of some sort with ancestors, spirit guides, angels, elementals. And specifically around ancestors, usually when that happens, when it's outside of a session, which is very intentional, it's because of, as I just heard, a dire need. And for me, that means there might be something happening with a family member that needs attention. It might be that the ancestor is one who actually needs assistance crossing over. As far as walking through a grocery store, a mall, any public place, the fact is that if you can, so meaning if you can connect with ancestors, and we all can connect with ancestors, it's a matter of development, practice, then yes, the opportunity is there. And that's, I believe, in many ways how the spirit realm looks at that. It's an opportunity. And so if you are in a grocery store and you're suddenly being barraged with information, then it would be perhaps helpful to just pause and do an internal inquiry. See if you can make sense of what information you're receiving. And then you have to make a determination, because if through that inquiry you've identified the person who's 10 feet up the aisle from you that these messages are for, can you imagine yourself walking up to them and saying, "I'm sorry to bother you. However, I'm a medium and I believe I have some messages from you. Would you be open to receiving those?" If that's something you can't see yourself doing, then you need to be really clear about your boundaries. And in that, you set the boundaries before entering into a public space like that. Perhaps you even set them as almost a sort of rule book that you go by. So perhaps you're not at all comfortable with the notion that you might be approached outside of a session. So in that case, set your boundaries that only will you connect and be available for connecting with ancestors within a designated session time. Make that one of your boundaries. Make that one of your rules. Set that intention, make it clear, and then stick to it if that's what you feel called to do. Okay? For myself, yes, I may receive information out in public that way. It is a rare thing for me to even consider approaching a stranger with information, and I even tread lightly when it comes to family and friends, because not everyone wants to hear what is coming through. So tread lightly, be aware. That's where you can also use your intuitive senses, your clairsentience, your claircognizance, and yes, your clairaudience too. You ask your guides, will this person be receptive to these messages? And perhaps that can help you as well. As far as the clairsentience, feel into it. Feel into the possibility of someone being receptive to receiving those messages off the cuff in that way. And trust those sensations. If it feels heavy in your body, that would be for me a really big no. Okay? With claircognizance, it may be that you truly just have this deep knowing, this understanding that this person will or will not accept what you suddenly have available for them. Okay? Let's see. So, question 3. My clairsentience is not very strong physically, but I'm beginning to think it may be very strong emotionally. I never knew clairsentience could be an emotional feeling, so thank you for that message from your vlog. I'm very visual and maybe clairaudient too. I have vivid dreams and sometimes see images when I'm lying in bed. Other than that, I don't get much. Okay, so before I get into this next part, I will say that this letter came from a client, and a client who's obviously interested in mediumship. So, when you've given me a reading, I've heard you say, "I'm seeing this." Usually your eyes are open. In your vlog, you described seeing things like snapshots or videos, but are they literally in your line of sight, Or do they come through as a mental image? Such a good question. When I say I'm seeing ... I'm seeing them in my head. However, it's sort of like a screen overlay. So imagine that the physical vision is here, and then I receive the second vision, which is here. Okay? And so it isn't even a split screen. It's literally an overlay, and I can see both at the same time. So that's what I mean by seeing. Clairvoyance in the external sense, that could be seeing shadow figures, that could be seeing ghosts who appear almost as though you've walked into a room and you can see a person standing there. Okay, so there's that difference. Boy, the lighting changed all of a sudden. A cloud has gone over the sun. All right, so the next part is, for me, when I'm trying to read for someone, seeing works, but it takes a long time for any image to form, and usually I get nothing. I guess I'm concerned because visual stuff seems unreliable for me. Here's the thing. When it comes to the clairsenses, really consider where you're strong with your physical senses. So if you are a visual person, clairvoyance will more than likely be one of your stronger intuitive senses. So, and I'm pretty sure this person is quite visual. This is about practice, and this is about trust. So in this particular instance, I can tell actually that, is it my guides or her guides? Her guides are stepping forward. So let's find out what they have to say about this without mentioning any names. Okay. We notice that in this instance, you are anxious, you are anticipating, you are expecting, and then in this way it is though you become the hamster on the wheel. You are getting nowhere, and yet you are spinning, spinning, spinning. We notice that you must be in calm in your heart. This is where the expressions of the visions will rise. Okay, so that explains that. I did actually hear monkey mind along with what was offered as far as the hamster on the wheel. So here's again where the expectation piece can really get in our way. It may be that you aren't receiving images because there aren't images to be received. On the other hand, as my client's guides just said, it could be that the ego is getting in the way. That's that hamster on the wheel, is the ego getting anxious and really wanting to fulfill the expectations of the client as well as their own expectations. And so this can definitely put the brakes on what is otherwise a very easeful function. Making sure that you're centered in your heart space and being very aware of how you're feeling physically will be helpful. If you're feeling tense, if you're feeling like your brow is furrowed, if you're feeling like your forehead is tight, if you know that when we think hard, we say we're thinking hard and we get everything is just tightening up here, that isn't helpful. Relax. If you're feeling like this area is tight, just give yourself a moment to loosen it up. Do everything you can to ease that tension. And then maybe it will be helpful to create a means by which you receive visions. Maybe you need to envision a blackboard in your head, first of all. An empty blackboard, an empty whiteboard, an empty movie screen, a blank TV screen. Maybe you want to envision a book and have all the pages be empty. And then invite those blank spaces to become populated with whatever it is that you need to see or want to see or feel will be helpful. Okay? All right. Let's see, the next part. I'm wondering if I'm looking for the wrong thing. Expectations. Or if you have any tips on what else I might consider looking for visually. Maybe I should be focusing on the emotional clairsentience instead. So again, specific to this client, I'm getting a yes in the clairsentience as well, although not to the exclusion of the clairvoyance. Use them together. It may be that you start by feeling an emotional sense, and then that emotion responds with your clairvoyance and blossoms into a vision. It might be the opposite. It might be that a vision pops into your head or a word pops into your head, and then a feeling comes with it or shortly after it, like as though in response to it. Practice with that. And this is again where practice is so important, and practicing with people you know and love who you can feel free to explore what will work best for you. And even having said that, with the understanding that as you develop, things may change that way, but at least it will get you started. Okay? So let's see if there's anything else that might be helpful to say about developing mediumship. Anything else that her guides or my guides want to say about that? Yeah, we noticed that for anyone wishing to explore this ability, remember that ancestors who will wish to communicate because they have a message to share, they have love to share, and be not in fear that there will be something said that will be upsetting. We notice you cannot be in control of this. We notice that if the client becomes upset, that is for them. This is not for you. Okay, and that's a good point too. Nothing that was brought up in the questions posed. However, it can be that messages that come through, I find it even just in regular intuitive sessions, sometimes stuff comes through that people do not want to hear. And that's okay. What we as practitioners need to trust is that even though it may feel like it's inconvenienced them, they needed to hear it. And so once again, getting out of our own way, getting out of our ego's desire to have everything be, oh, so nice. We need to step away from that and really be an open channel, as I just heard. Really be an open channel. And that means not editing what you feel, what you see, what you hear. Communicate everything. Because the other thing about a mediumship session, as with an intuitive session, a tarot reading, anything of that nature, everything is something. So it might seem like an external noise, or a song that pops into your head, or your eyes are drawn to a window and you see a bird, that they are just unrelated. Nothing is unrelated when you're in a session. Nothing is unrelated. So you really need to practice your skills of witnessing, of observing, and expressing everything you notice. So if your eyes are drawn all of a sudden to the window and you're seeing a bird, or you're noticing the breeze through the trees, what is it about that? What is important about that? Start a dialogue with your client about that and notice what comes up. Same thing with songs that pop into your head. Same thing with external noises you might hear that seem inconveniently timed, and yet what is it about that noise at that point in time? What is it about the noise itself? It might not just be the interruption of the noise. What is the noise? What does that mean? What might it symbolize? Okay? I know this is a lot. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any more questions at all, or any questions at all, feel free to leave them in comments, or if you're unable to do that, as with what happened with this client, she was unable to leave a comment, so send me an email, because that will give me an opportunity to answer questions that probably others are considering too. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And until next time, you take really good care. Lots of love.